NRATV with Bill Whittle.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Hot Mike Show, live from Los Angeles. I'm Bill Whittle, and Hot Mike is right about to come on, but he's lying down. He's had one of those, mud facials, and he's got a couple of cucumbers. All right, dude, whatever. He's not going to be on today. We'll look for him tomorrow. Today we're going to be talking about the Women's March, which we've been covering a little bit of, leading up to its actual marching of the actual women. This whole thing basically was the latest series of a chain reaction that began, as you know by now, as we've been talking about it just pretty much extensively for the last couple of weeks, when Dana Loesch began to put out a piece called Freedom's Safest Place, which had the audacity, the temerity, and was plainly unfair and racist enough to basically show left-wingers rioting in the streets and say, hey, you know what, we're getting a little tired of this. So back and forth we went. But since we spoke to you last, they had a women's march from the NRA headquarters to the Justice Department in Washington. I would like to say about this. First of all, you can see some of the people marching here. It doesn't strike me as a, particularly enormous civil rights movement here. But there's a lot about this Women's March that's a little disturbing, aside from the fact that these people strike me as a little bit disturbing. The whole purpose of the Women's March is basically to say that because the NRA pointed out how violent leftists are and used video to that effect, they basically are coming out and saying that they're protesting against the hateful attitude of the National Rifle Association, not to mention the racism, of course, and the misogyny, and don't forget the homophobia, because you're not an organization if you don't have all those things mixed in. But you really have to understand something too here, and that is that this entire idea of a march, the entire idea of what they're doing, the whole general premise of what the NRA said is hateful and harmful to us, and it's mean, and why would you be such nasty people? When, as I say, in point of fact, all we did was show left-wingers beating people up, burning cars, smashing windows, and so they go. And so they say things like, we're better than that as a people, and on and on and on and on about how hateful the whole thing is. This is all part of the campaign to basically demonize and delegitimize any opposition to progressive policies. It's how it's working. It's how it has to work, you see. When you're dealing with a political philosophy like modern progressivism, which is based on nothing but emotion, that's it and that's all, raw emotion. When you're dealing with raw emotion, then all you can do is say, that hurts my feelings, and ignore the actual data on the ground. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, is some of the actual data. I don't know if we have it teed up, but one of the people that responded to the to Dana's response, to Grant Stinchfield's response, and so on, was Black Lives Matter, and Black Lives Matter did a response. But let me just start with that tweet, because that's what I told our poor producers what we're going to do. One of the people who were responding to this gun march thing was responding to the fact that while we were watching this march in real time, I was on Grant's show. I saw it on Friday. And our friend Chuck Colton was there at the march, and he discovered that the people who were marching against guns had armed security. Can you imagine our surprise? It's another one of these things we'll be talking about a little bit later on in the show. The anti-gun marchers had armed securities, and when we questioned them about this, when on Twitter, Dana Loesch and some others basically said, seems a little hypocritical, don't you think, for you guys to be marching against the idea of gun ownership and protesting the NRA for wanting people to have their own means of defense, when you, in fact, have your own personal armed security? And the tweet you saw there was from a spokesperson for Everytown for Gun Safety. That's a gun control group. And this tweet is from one of their spokespeople, Erica Soto Lamb. And when asked why they have armed security, her response was, because people on your side of debate threaten our lives. We are not anti-gun. Why do you criticize our security? Same you want for self. Now, here's where I get a little confused, Erica Soto Lamb. I get a little confused at this. First of all, I don't know whether people on this side of the debate are threatening your lives, but I do know that the actual violence is from leftists onto conservatives. It's conservatives who are beaten up at these events. It's conservatives who are forced off of campuses on speaking events. It's conservatives who get their heads beaten in with beer bottles in Manhattan, as we saw last week on the show. It's conservatives who get themselves brained with bicycle locks just trying to attend a speaking event in Berkeley, California, at the University of California, Berkeley. So it's your people, it's the progressives that are doing the actual violence, but that's not the real point. The point is this. Here's the person from this gun control organization, Every Town for Gun Safety, saying, well, we want armed security because why are you criticizing our security? We just want the same as what you guys want for yourself. And this is where I think I have quite a short circuit. We're not anti-gun? Sure you're not. Why do you criticize our security? Same you want for yourself. Aren't you marching against what we want for ourselves? Am I missing something here? Did the spokesperson for Every Town for Gun Safety say, hey, we have armed security because we just want the same personal security that you want for yourself? Does that mean we're on the same page then, Erica Soto-Lam? Is that what that means? Because yes, we do like to have armed security for ourselves. We like to have it in our own person because many of us can't afford to have our own paid professional security. Plus, a lot of us think it's kind of fun on top of it. But again, here's the thing. I don't get it. You're basically, your response to is, we think it's hypocritical for you to be marching against guns and have your own guns protecting yourself, and for you to say, hey, we just want security the same way you want it for ourselves. Didn't you just lose the argument there, Erica? Didn't you just lose the argument? You're paying for armed security, and when we say it's hypocritical, you say, well, we just want the same things that you want. I don't know. Maybe it's me. Some of these things seem easier than they appear to the naked eye. In any event, we got a lot of great stuff going on. We'll bring on our guest in just a minute. I don't know if I called for this out of order. Do we have that Black Lives Matter response to the original Dana Lash piece? Because that's got something interesting at the beginning I'd like to talk about real quick.
They use their guns to assassinate black people. They use their schools to funnel black students through a school-to-prison pipeline. They use their state institutions, bought politicians, business conglomerates, and white supremacist domestic terrorists to incite violence over and over again. And then they use their new president to enact a law and order administration, all to make them shoot first, to make them ask questions later, make them scream, I thought he had a gun in his hand, and I feared for my life, and he matched the description of a suspect, and she was threatening them.
So that's the Black Lives Matter response to Dana Lash's original piece, and it's shot kind of in the same style as Dana Lash. And here's the problem with that. You see, first of all, they went 2/3 of the way through that, and then all of a sudden they say, why the darkness? The entire Black Lives Matter movement is predicated on a lie. And as we pointed out last week on this show, the lie is that in 2014, something like 6,000, and I forget the exact number, 6,087 black homicides, of which 243 were committed by police officers under any circumstances, including being pointed at, gunfights, all the rest. Total number of black homicides in 2014 was 4%. Was 4%. So when Black Lives Matter comes back with a response to Dana Lash's piece, and they're claiming that the NRA exists so that white people can go out and exterminate black people, and hands up, don't shoot, and all the rest of it, even if they were correct, and even if every single one of those police interactions were dealing with unarmed black people, and they weren't, by the way, then why would you make such an enormous deal out of 4% of your problem when 96% of your problem you not only don't address, but you simply absolutely adamantly refuse to admit that it even exists? In any event, the hypocrisy of this whole march thing is just over the top, and I can't track it by myself, so I don't have to, fortunately. Let's bring in our guest from Breitbart.com, Dr. AWR Hawkins, who's been a regular here on NRATV, but it's first time on our show. AWR, good to see you. And I want to start with something that you wrote in your article on this march, and I think this is the entire point. You said pretty much, quote, "The left has one standard for themselves and another for the common man." Can you give us a couple of examples of that, and especially about their general, just how much they despise the common man?
Right. Well, I mean, the example is they have the march against guns, as you know. It's against the NRA and against guns, and they're protected by armed guards. I mean, you've discussed that. That's the example. But you have Shannon Watts. She has armed security. You have, and she's been running against our Second Amendment rights, running little surrogate campaigns with the Democrats for years. And so these people think that they enjoy something that we can't enjoy or shouldn't enjoy. I should put it that way. Michael Bloomberg's a great example. He's surrounded by armed security, but he wants to be sure that we don't have the guns that we need to defend our own lives. It's hypocrisy 101. But it's what you expect from the left. The left is a caste system worldview, and by that I mean they don't see 3 or 4 castes. There's not a middle class for real. In their mind, there's the ruling class and then everybody else, and that's what we're stuck with right now.
I mentioned on Grant's show this morning that I really think that's one of the 2 big motivations for the anti-gun movement on the part of the left, and that is. Big part of it is what you just mentioned. The elites on the left consider the ability to have somebody defending their life. It's like a perk for them, isn't it, AWR? It's like a perk. Right. It's like a company car or a really nice health care plan.
It's not a right. It's a privilege. It's a privilege that they get to enjoy. But as I say, the man who works the long days, his back hurts when he comes home, his fingers crack, he has calluses. He sweats through his shirt every day. That man doesn't deserve anything in their mind. But our founders would call that man a true American. Thomas Jefferson would call that man the ideal American. But the left doesn't see things the way our founders do, or our founders did. So that's what we deal with. But you're right. It's one set of rules for us, for the minions, and then it's another set of rules for the ruling class, who every now and then we're so fortunate we get to see them out in the streets marching. And so that's basically how they view life.
It's how they view everything, right? It's a fundamental hypocrisy in all of leftism. In fact, this is the reason why the left is the left and why the left turns violent when somebody finally shines a light on them. The entire idea of progressivism is a lie, and it's a lie. And here's the thing, AWR, they know it's a lie. The gun example that we just mentioned is a terrific example. Here's another one. You'll often see celebrity progressives talk about, we need to raise taxes because poor people don't get enough benefits in this country. And I'm a rich person myself, and therefore, look how much virtue I have. I'm calling for higher taxes on myself. And the second the cameras are off, they go to their accountants and they say, take every single deduction you can, walk it to the line, put your toes over the line, that kind of thing. They have production companies to make sure that they pay the minimum income tax possible. And everywhere you look at these people, it's hypocrisy, 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 designed to make themselves look better than the rest of us.
Right. And that's it. It's all showboating. But you're right. I think the most important thing you say there is their worldview won't stand up to scrutiny, because their worldview, political correctness in general, is a mental paradigm that requires you to accept something other than reality. And it requires you to say all things are equal, and we know all things are not equal. It's that paradigm that in the university the professors teach you, no one country is better than the other countries. America is just like everybody else. No, America is a phenomenal experiment in freedom, and it stands head and shoulders above other countries for that reason, and for the way our rights are protected by the Bill of Rights. And so, but they like to diminish and equivocate. And they bring things down to a median level in our minds, so that nothing's really that special. But then while they're taking all the specialness away from us, as you point out, they retain the specialness for them because they're in the ruling class. And to be in the ruling class simply means that you're a leftist who has given up on logic, but you have a microphone or a bullhorn or a stage, and you can talk louder than everyone else. That's basically what it means.
I do firewall videos at BillWhittle.com. I've got one coming up this week, and very, very briefly, just directly to this point, it starts off by talking about this one fellow up in Connecticut. There was a person who ran in the women's category. He was born a male, and the person claimed to identify as a female. So the state of Connecticut allowed this person to run in the women's categories. And imagine our surprise when this person won every event pretty much very handily. And I take the statement I begin with is, why was this person allowed to run with the women? And the answer is, I think, AWR is because that person has to. Because if that person is not allowed to compete with the women, then that's because there's a fundamental difference between men and women, and that men are significantly faster and stronger than women. And if there's a real world difference like that that's insurmountable by wishful thinking, then everything else falls apart too, right? Then maybe healthcare isn't free, and maybe people won't work as hard for the common good as they do for themselves. And everything else that they're based on, it's all predicated on destroying any sense of external reality.
Right. No, you're 100% right. But, the other thing is, and you're saying maybe, and I know you're actually making rhetorical points. I know you already know the answer, but the viewers need to understand history has already proven all this. This is already settled stuff. You have to reject objective truth and history to fall into this leftist trap. The Plymouth Colony proved in the 1620s that if we have common ownership versus private ownership, if we work for a community rather than working for our individual selves, if we do that, we won't work as hard. We will all eventually begin to find reasons to not show up. Soon, we'll develop from the ground up a welfare class that right now the leftists are trying to build from the top down.
And the logical sort of end of that entire argument you just made is what you had in the Soviet Union just before its collapse, where the constant running joke among the people is we pretend to work and they pretend to pay us. That's pretty much what you get. When we come back, I want to talk about something else here that's really important. One of the quotes that they were using on this women's march is one of the slogans was, "Real men don't need guns." And when we come back, I'm going to make the argument, oh, yes, we do. Oh, yes, we do. We need them to protect ourselves from these left-wingers who do nothing but riot in the streets when they lose elections. But we also need them to protect ourselves against the heroes of the left. And we'll be talking with AWR Hawkins about some of the people that the left lionizes when we're back in about 2 minutes right here on the Hot Mic Show on NRATV.